Hello, I am Dr. Chris Brown. I am the host of the Disability Sport Info podcast. I'm an expert in disability sport and in Paralympic Games. This explainer video is about cheating in Paralympic sport. Cheating happens in Paralympic sport. Just like in Olympic sport, some athletes are motivated to cheat. It may be the pressure to win, financial incentives, a lack of knowledge or understanding of doping, a poor infrastructure for catching cheats, or a combination of these factors. Whatever the motivation may be, some Paralympians cheat. Let's consider the types of cheating that occur in Paralympic sport. Broadly, we can categorize cheating into four areas: performance-enhancing drugs, the misuse of therapeutic use exemptions, known as TUEs. TUEs are legitimate use of banned substances by an athlete for a medical condition. Boosting and intentional misrepresentation in classification. Performance-enhancing drugs and therapeutic use exemptions occur in Olympic sport too. Boosting and intentional misrepresentation in classification are unique to Paralympic sport. I want to focus on boosting and classification in more depth, but a quick word on the misuse of TUEs. A recent study found that 3% of Paralympic athletes have a therapeutic use exemption, compared to less than 1% of Olympic athletes. A higher figure of Paralympians is not unexpected. It is common for some Paralympians to have complex medical conditions that might require TUEs. The evidence suggests misuse of TUEs does not seem to be a significant issue. Back to boosting and classification. Both are important and unique to the Paralympics. Let's consider each in turn. Boosting is unique to athletes with a spinal cord injury. Athletes with a spinal cord injury of sufficient severity can experience something called autonomic dysreflexia, known as AD for short. Autonomic dysreflexia can be life-threatening and is unwelcome for most people. Some athletes, however, actively encourage it. This is because autonomic dysreflexia can provide a performance gain of approximately 10%. This happens due to elevated blood pressure, supporting the body to have a more normal response to exercise. AD is brought about by athletes self-harming. Typically, this can involve winding leg straps too tightly, cutting off blood flow to the feet, legs, or scrotum, or by tampering with a catheter to inflate the bladder. Boosting is a dangerous practice, but one athletes can use to enhance their performance. Testing for boosting is tricky. Symptoms of boosting are not easily identified in a real-time setting. To detect boosting accurately, it is likely the method would be too obtrusive. Moreover, some actions of a sport may unintentionally result in AD. For example, high-contact collisions in wheelchair rugby may trigger a dysreflexic response. Boosting is a banned practice by the International Paralympic Committee. Athletes found to have boosted are disqualified. It is a form of doping without drugs. But because of the difficult task of catching boosting, it is a contentious topic. Limited data exists for the prevalence of intentional boosting. Finally, let's turn to classification. The Paralympian Ali Jawad argues classification is the biggest threat to the integrity of the Paralympic Games. Without fair classification, the whole competitive structure of Paralympic sport is compromised. Classification cheating refers to the athletes that intentionally misrepresent the nature of their impairment. This can lead to the athlete being placed into an easier category than they should be. By easier, I mean that the athlete would be less impacted by their impairment compared to other athletes in their class. The athlete, therefore, gains an unfair advantage. Classification cheating is more relevant to athletes with acute impairments, where a classification is needed to identify the appropriate class for the athlete. Athletes can misrepresent their impairment by not fully exerting themselves during classification tests. This could be through a lack of effort or a result of deliberately fatiguing the impairment before the classification takes place. It is hard to measure the prevalence of classification cheating. This is in part due to the sensitivity of the issue, but also because objective evidence is needed to determine intentional misrepresentation. And this is not always available or easy to capture. Moreover, due to changes in classification, in terms of the rule or the nature of an athlete's impairment, athletes can be reclassified into different classes. This does not necessarily mean intentional misrepresentation took place. Classification is not a doping behavior, but if athletes are found to have intentionally misrepresented their impairment, they can be banned and disqualified from events. The most famous example of classification cheating is from the 2000 Sydney Games. 10 of the 12 athletes on the gold-winning Spanish men's basketball team faked having an intellectual disability. In more recent times, the Indian discus thrower Vinod Kumar was suspended for 2 years in 2022 following a violation of classification rules at the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics. This followed a 1-year suspension for a sitting volleyball player in 2021. To conclude, cheating occurs in Paralympic sport. Paralympic sport is no different to other elite sport. The majority of athletes compete fairly, but some do not. More research is needed to fully understand the nature of cheating in Paralympic sport.